All right, folks, welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. And today, as you can see, my special guest, none other than Mr. Chris Kiebzak.
What's up,
Welcome to the
guys?
Little House. Welcome.
Nice to see you again.
Yes, here we are in the Little House, as we say here.
That's
We're
right.
not we're not one of the big boys like some of these guys where they have the big house. We got the little house.
Right.
So, but we want to start this off by saying please subscribe. We want to be able to get more people involved in these channels and rankings and all kinds of good things, but we can't do too much if we don't get people to, let us know that you're watching, give us some comments, show us a sign. Love to hear from you. So without further ado, we're going to be ranking none other than Bon Jovi today and all 16 albums. That's what you got, 16 of them, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get rolling. What you got for number 16?
All right. So number 16 for me is an album that sort of encapsulates what Bon Jovi became in the later half of their career. Um, for a Bon Jovi album in 2007, especially after some pretty solid albums up to that point, I feel this is the weakest and sort of, like I said, encapsulates and shows what style they're going to. Way too country for me. I feel like it's a completely different band. Through a lot of these later albums, there was still a Bon Jovi feel to it. To me, this does not scream Bon Jovi, and you could put Bryan Adams' voice on these songs, and I feel like it's going to be a Bryan Adams record or whatever. I mean, there is a little bit of John representation on there, but besides his like how known his voice is, I don't feel there's much good on here at all. Whole lot of leaving and till we ain't strangers anymore are the only ones that sort of stuck in my head. But beyond that, I feel it's a pretty weak album that sets up what's to come for the next 5 or 6 Bon Jovi records. Not really a fan of that one. That's why it follows right at the end there at number 16 for me.
So that was your number 16. Mine is going to be none other than the album that came out in the year 2009. And that would be none other than The Circle.
Yeah.
Just a, hate to say it, folks, but horrific album. I mean, there's only one song on there that I can actually say that I like, and that's Thorn in My Side. That's the obviously the standout track of the album. Nothing else comes close. Everything else is just mundane. And I really don't have much more to say. I mean, I can't even give you a recommended track because there are none in my estimation. I really just don't like this album. And that's the truth. Thrown in My Side's the only standout track that actually stands out at all. Other than that, number 16, The Circle.
Got it. Okay, my number 15 is This House Is Not for Sale, which came out in 2016. It was written and recorded in 2015 to 16. Like you just said about The Circle for you, there's really not a song I can really even put down as decent for me. I mean, 6 singles came off this album, and if I listed them to you besides This House Is Not for Sale, you can't name one other single off the top of your head, can you? There were 6 of them.
Wow.
And this is not for sale, released in August, and then we had one in October, November, December, February, and March, and we can't name one other song on that record besides This House Is Not for Sale. Not much to say about it. Right there, smack dab in the middle of new Bon Joviville, where they completely negated their past. There's no more hint of that. And this album is right up there in the worst of those records that came out since The Circle. So that's why at number 15, This House Is Not for Sale is on my list there.
Okay. All right. So my number 15 is going to go back and probably surprise some people. Because it's going back to the 90s. And if you remember, they only made 2 albums in the 90s. So this one is going to be the weaker of the two,
Okay.
and that's going to be none other than 1995's These Days.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's just these albums in the 90s were just putrid compared to the stuff in the 80s. It's like I don't know who they were trying to become there. Unfortunately, they definitely didn't win me over any on these albums. I ended up buying them many years down the road because of how horrible they were. There was nothing on there that I would care to even buy it before, but as time went on, I found them really cheap, so therefore I picked them up, you know.
Right.
So let me go over it real quick. That's These Days. I would say the standout track on the album on this one is probably the title track. And man, I'm looking at it right here, and I really, Hey God, it's okay. This ain't a love song, it's okay. Those are the only two songs I would probably recommend other than These Days. And for me, it's just pure putrid garbage right in the middle of the grunge era. And that's where I got These Days at number 15.
Gotcha. All right. Number 14 for me. This is 2013 record. What about now? When I was going through the albums for this, and I told you this before, that there was a few, there was 3 or 4 albums that I only heard the singles, or 2 or 3 songs that I checked when it came out on Spotify or on CD, most of them I own. Um, and when I was going through it, like, I didn't even remember this album existed. Once I heard it and the first track, I was like, okay, like, I definitely listened to this, but it's that just flat for me. It's that flat. There's not one song on here that like gave me that feel like, oh, that riff's really cool, or that lyric is really cool. I mean, musically, lyrically, it's all they turned into later Goo Goo Dolls. So this album is right there where the pop aspect just does nothing for me. Um, and from, number 10 on for me, the last 6 studio record, or the last 6 that are on my list here, are basically all from that time period, because I feel they became a completely different band. So that's why What About Now and a lot of these other ones are very low for me. And this is the first time we've done one of these rankings where there isn't like especially in the bigger discographies, where there isn't a golden light album. Like, wow, they came back on this record and it's higher in our list. For me, all these later albums are right there at the end there. So that's why What About Now, number 14 for me. But we are starting to get to the good stuff soon.
I hope.
Soon. And it's going to take a little bit, but we'll get there.
Okay, so that was your number 14. Mine is going to go back to the year 2020. And that is going to be another one of these duds, really.
Yeah.
Um, no, nothing against Phil X, but these albums with him on are definitely the worst of the catalog for Bon Jovi. I don't know if this albums would have been any different if Richie had played on them, probably, because obviously he has a lot of characteristics more in his playing that matches better with John's vocals and their lyrics. But
Well, that's probably why Richie's not there, because that's why the last few albums he was on, we had 2 or 3 songs that stood out, I feel.
yeah, yeah. All right, so let me finish up with this one real quick, and you can get out of yours here.
Sorry.
That's how
Yeah, yeah,
bad
yeah.
this one is. Another thud dud album here with 2020 at number 14. Let It Rain is a good track. That song I like. I thought it was definitely the standout track of the album, the best song, bar none. Lower the Flag was okay. I'll take that one as a consideration to pass it out to these people out here to give it a listen because I felt it was good enough to deserve that much.
Right.
But other than that, the rest of the album, you can flush it down the toilet. 2020 at number 14.
Gotcha. Well, we were close. My number 13 is 2020. You've pretty much said it all. I mean, everything from the name of the record, naming it 2020, down on is lame and just completely fabricated pop music for soccer moms. And nothing on these records, especially this one for some reason. This one and What About Now for me, looking back, those two probably should have been in 15 and 16, because there's really nothing to even talk about for those records. And when you name the album, the year it comes out, and you try to capitalize on what 2020 meant for a lot of people that were struggling and during this COVID thing. It's just cheap, it's lame, it's a cheap attempt, and the songs and the lyrical value and the stories that he tells shows that there's just nothing there was nothing left in this end time period. So that's why, yeah, 2020, I definitely mirror what you're saying. That's number 13 for me.
All right, very good. All right, so now we are going to go. I'm going to take you back to another year here, and that is going to be back to the 90s for the other album that I really could care less about in the 90s, and that's going to be the first one that they released. The follow-up to New Jersey, that's Keep the Faith at number 13. So this one definitely a much better album than these days. I will say Bed of Roses was a standout. Recommended tracks, I would say Dry County and Keep the Faith itself, this title track. But the rest of it just, once again, nothing to write home about in my estimation. And this is kind of where you started to see the chink in the armor of Bon Jovi back in the middle 90s there. Because they did fade away after these two albums in the 90s. They faded away and they took them 5 years to come out with another album after that. But we'll get to that shortly. But yep, number 13, Keep the Faith.
Cool. All right. My number 12 is Burning Bridges, which is their 13th release. Again, same thing that I've been saying. I don't want to keep repeating it. But it's interesting that Sambora, this was what, the second album without him, and he had a writing credit.
First,
Oh,
first.
first, that's right, first. And he does have a writing credit or co-writing credit on Saturday Night Gave Me Sunday Morning, which is interesting because that's the only song, and I thought this well before I knew that. This song sort of like made me think, oh, okay, that's Bon Jovi. Now, again, there's never a point in these later records where I'm like, wow, that song is good. But for crappy later Bon Jovi, it's an okay Bon Jovi song for that time period. Other than that, it's not a song I would put on a playlist other than maybe a Bon Jovi one. And that song, and it's weird that that song was actually the second single, I believe, released, or that and We Don't Run were both released at the same time. So John knew putting a single out with Richie's name stamped on there might make a difference. But again, all it does is make the song listenable on a really crappy record. So that's why number 12 for me, Burning Bridges.
All right, I'm going to go back to for my number 12, we're going to go back to the 2016, the second album with Phil X, and that's going to be This House Is Not for Sale.
Okay.
I believe you already had that on your list already.
Yep.
So for me on this one's a little bit better. This is where the albums start getting a little bit better for me because at least there's more than just two songs to talk about for an album for me at least.
Right.
Obviously the title cut is decent. I like Roller Coaster. That's a good song. Reunion. So I'm not sure. I don't really have a standout track of those three. I think they're all equal. So it
Right.
does make it kind of hard picking one song on this album better than the other ones. But at least it has three to choose from, and you guys can pick it for yourself and decide which one is the better of the three. But those are the ones I would recommend: Reunion, Roller Coaster, and of course the title track, This House Is Not for Sale. And that's what I got for number 12.
All right. So my number 11, I am with the documentary released on Hulu, I don't know if you've seen it yet or not, and Bon Jovi, John sort of embracing their past finally and what made them what they are. I seen a little bit different in this album and the one that just came out recently, Forever. You can tell he's trying to put himself in a direction that can let the old fans sort of say, okay, like let's listen to this whole record. Like there's some Bon Jovi like things in here that isn't the new Bon Jovi. And I see that it gives me a little bit of hope if he starts writing records again, like Have a Nice Day, and even The Circle, which I know you're not a big fan of, but if he starts writing records like Bounce On, I think a lot of people are going to come back into the fold. But I think It's still not a great record, but it does stand high and above 95% of 2004 Bon Jovi on for me. So that's why the new one forever is number 11. I have hope for the future based on this record, and that's why I had to put it a little bit higher than the rest.
All right, my number 11 is going to probably surprise some people because it kind of surprised myself. I mean, I knew this album wasn't one of my favorite Bon Jovi records, but I figured it would have knocked off a couple more of those cheesier albums from the later catalog. And actually, there's going to be three of them that are going to be finishing ahead of this one, surprisingly.
Right.
But unfortunately, 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit is going to reach out at number 11. I just
Wow, that's
never
shocking.
really got into that album. It didn't have the Runaway on it. It didn't have anything as good as Slippery When Wet on it. And to me, I feel like In and Out of Love was just kind of eh. It's one of the honorable mentions. Always Run to You is probably my standout track for the album, and then The Hardest Part is the Night is another recommended track. Never really got into Silent Night, Only Lonely, a little cheesy. It definitely hasn't aged well over its time. Um, you know, I just never really got into this album, unfortunately. And that's why I got it where I have it, and that is going to be staying at number 11, 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit.
Gotcha. All right. Well, number 10 for me is another one in the new pack of records, and that's The Circle, released in 2009. To me, this is the last album of still transitioning Bon Jovi. um, from starting with Crush, it went a little bit poppier and lighter and more friendly to open ears that don't like glam metal or hair metal, or not even that they were, but more rocking type stuff with loud guitars. This is the album where it cemented them into getting into that style, but the songs are still catchy. And the thing about that three album or that four album thing with Crush, Bounce, Have a Nice Day, in The Circle is there's like six songs that sound, and they're all singles that sound almost exactly alike the with the cadence of the choruses, the melodicness of the choruses. But the thing is, those kind of melodic songs are my favorite. It doesn't matter if it's Justin Bieber, Kiss, Bon Jovi, Goo Goo Dolls. You put out a real melodic song that doesn't sound stock, and I love it. So I had a lot of hope with We Weren't Born to Follow. I'm like, okay, they're going to stay in the same vein as Have a Nice Day and to a lesser extent Bounce. Like this could be a good style of Bon Jovi. But then the rest of the record starts and it becomes stock, but there's still some melody. There's still a lot of points where I'm like, oh, Richie and John, just like you would on an Aerosmith record. Wow, even though it's 50 years into their career, 55 years into their career, it's Steve and Joe, and you can feel that on the record. This is the last record that there's a hint of Richie and John, and obviously somebody was calling the shots and making this record more light and but again, this is the last one that I feel is in those four record block that ended up leading to what we have now, but it's far better than what we have now. So that's why The Circle is right there at number 10 for me.
All right, my number 10 is going to be Lost Highway.
Mm.
Thought this one was going to be even worse, but it actually made the top 10. I didn't
Six
expect it
spots,
to. When
six spots closer than mine.
Yeah, I didn't really think it would be this high, to tell you the truth, but that's
Yeah.
where we got it. Summertime, cool song, Any Other Day. I like a standout track for me is Seat Next to You. Really like that song. Everybody's Broken is cool. One Step Closer also.
Mm.
So as you can see, there's a lot more songs to talk about on this album, for me at least. Um, Lost Highway was one of those albums that you know, we thought that, who would have thought anything was going to happen, around that time. You really didn't expect,
Right.
you know, what was going to be forthcoming in a few more albums down the road there. It was pretty and Lost Highway did go platinum, surprisingly. That's something else that And as it is right now, it's actually the last album to go platinum from Bon Jovi. So it's not sure the coincidence in it, but it did reach my number 10. So that's where we got Lost Highway.
Cool. All right. So my number nine, this is the second time I seen Bon Jovi was on this tour. And it's Have a Nice Day. I was pretty much I was pretty much at the end of my peak of Bon Jovi fandom, and when this album was released in 2005. I was born in 88, so I mean I was still, I was a teenage when this album came out. I enjoyed the songs for what they were. Listening back, they all sort of fall in the path of later Bon Jovi, but not to the extent of the Circle Downward. So for me, Have a Nice Day has some standouts. The title track is probably my favorite on the record, Have a Nice Day. Again, that is where it pretty much started, where the next four first singles off of a record for Bon Jovi were going to have that melodic cadence in the chorus, sing along chorus, really get stuck in your head. I mean, there's times throughout my life when I go a year or 2 years without listening to Bon Jovi, and a song off this or Bounce or something from those middle albums really pops in my head. Last Man Standing, which I believe they opened with at that show when he came out in the middle of the crowd. Great song, still holds up for me. Complicated, I really like. Again, sort of sounds very similar to Have a Nice Day, the song, but those big choruses and melodicness really gets to me. You can tell that you could tell the difference when you listen to this record to later records that Richie isn't on. Richie's all over this record. His playing comes out and you say, yeah, that's Richie. It's not a studio player. You can hear it in a lot of the solos. So for me, Have a Nice Day it's the last record that has more than two decent songs on it, in my opinion. And it's not saying so much because the rest of Bon Jovi's catalog has a lot more than that for me, most of them. But Have a Nice Day for me is the last solid, not so overproduced and to the public record that they have. So that's why right there at number 9 for me is Have a Nice Day.
All right. And my number 9, and that's going to be Burning Bridges, the first album with Phil X on after Richie left.
Right.
This album surprisingly reached number 13 on the charts, but if you look at their history there, it's the worst a Bon Jovi album has landed on the charts at that point since 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit. So you knew something was wrong. Even though it hit number 13, they still didn't have that. I mean, if you look previously, their previous 3 albums all went to number 1. The previous 2 albums before that hit the top 2. So yeah, they definitely took a licking on this one, probably because of the fact with no Richie there.
Right.
But as far as the album itself is concerned, made number 9 for me. And this one here, a few good tracks to talk about. I would say the highlight of the album for me is probably We All Fall Down. I also like the same one you mentioned about Saturday Night Gave Me Sunday Morning. We Don't Run's another one that kind of sticks out pretty good, and Blind Love.
Cool.
But other than that, this album, as you can see, it's definitely a lot better than the previous albums that we talked about. Still not, what we expect from Bon Jovi, obviously. We expected better,
Right.
and unfortunately, he fell short in my estimation. So in my estimation, we're still not even on a really good Bon Jovi album yet. Looks like there's going to be a couple coming shortly, but not yet. So number 9, Burning Bridges.
Cool. All right. My number 8 is an album you had pretty low these days. Um, there's one reason I have this album higher than Have a Nice Day in the Circle, because it's like you said, it's not that great of a record. But the song, which you did not mention, Something to Believe in, is something that it was on the live record they released right after Crush. And that's how I first heard it as a kid. And I don't know why I fell in love with it. I never really been a religious guy. That song is obviously all about God, but it's one of those songs, for me, and it's a lot like this in Bon Jovi's catalog and a lot of bands' catalog. I can love a song for the lyrics alone, I can love a song for the music alone, or I can love them because both are really strong. To me, this song, I don't know why, it sounds very unlike regular, like normal earlier Bon Jovi, but for some reason, um, this song just hit me hard, and the studio version is just as good as the live version. I recommend for anyone watching that haven't checked this record out in a while, check out the song "Something to Believe In." Check out the live album right after Crush that came out in the mid 2000s or in the early 2000s because that song's on there. And it spoke to me just musically, and
Mhm.
I totally different for their sound, but for some reason it just did something to me. So besides the rest of the record is not that strong. I know you mentioned Something for the Pain, right, which is a
Mhm.
decent song on that record. And these days the title track is also okay, but to me, Something to Believe In is in my top three Bon Jovi songs of all time. I don't know why. It just every time I listen to it, it evokes emotion out of me, and that's why I have it a little higher up than it should be in number 8.
Okay. All right. So my number 8 is going to go back to the year 2013. The final album with Mr. Sambora on it. What about now? Um, this album pretty much has a similar amount of songs that the previous album that I mentioned, Burning Bridges, but I like the songs on this one just a little bit better. Obviously, Richie's on here, so that could have something to do with it. The title track is cool. I'm With You. Pictures of You is probably my standout track. What's Left of Me, Beautiful World. Those are the songs for me that really stick out like a sore thumb. So at least we got an album here where there's at least 5 songs on it that I could say, hey, this is a Bon Jovi album, surprisingly. This
Right,
is probably the era, actually, when I stopped buying Bon Jovi. I used to, pretty much get them the day they came out, or at least within the first week or two of an album coming out. But for some reason, I actually stopped. I never got this one until like, what was it, 2013? I probably got it like in during the COVID area is where I
right.
bought it, you know. So sadly as it may seem, but it took me a while to catch on to it. But it's actually one of their better albums, compared to all the ones that came after it for sure. But that's where we're at right now. It's number 8. What about now?
Cool. All right. My number 7 is from 1990, what is it, 3 or 92, in Keep the Faith. Has a lot of standouts here, especially with the singles. I love the title track, Keep the Faith. Love that bass line. I love the feel of the song. Great song. Bed of Roses obviously is on that record. Great song. In These Arms is okay, is a decent song. You know, not a great record, but definitely still, stands strong at number 7 for me. And a lot of emotion and about different kind of uh things that he's singing about than what the earlier albums had. More serious, more about faith, obviously, more about knowing who you are. So, decent album. Wish there was some better, maybe heavier songs, but still a good listen and definitely worth revisiting. So Keep the Faith, number 7.
All right, so for my number 7, we're going to go back to none other than an album that you mentioned, and that's going to be the 2005 album, Have a Nice Day.
Cool.
Another platinum album for the band. Reached at number 2 as the peak charting position for the band there. And this one, I think it might have been that might have been one of the final tours that I seen with them. It was the one that stands out the most memorable for me, at least out of the last time that I seen them. I had to go back and check that, but Have a Nice Day. It had a few, a lot of radio airplay on here because of the Who Says You Can't Go Home? I actually like the version with the band better. I don't like the Jennifer Nettles garbage version. I
Right.
just can't get into her voice. But she did help sell this album for sure because many country people probably bought this album, and that's what helped sell the album to where it is today. But
Right.
for me, I would say that's definitely a good song. I just don't like her vocals. If you play the two songs side by side, most people should prefer the Bon Jovi version. Welcome to Wherever You Are is another really great song on this album. I really enjoy that one. Um, Obviously the title track, Have a Nice Day. Uh, Bells of Freedom, another song that stands out. And the song I always thought that was pretty good on this one was I Am. That one definitely also stands out as one of the best songs on the album. So, definitely this is where the Bon Jovi albums, I would say, to me, are considered where the good starts, right around here.
Cool.
All right. So that's where we got number seven, Have a Nice Day.
I like that. All right. My number six is in my opinion, the album that started uh the newer version of Bon Jovi with their sound, but that's Crush. I love this record. I thought it might be a little lower, but definitely not. Definitely one of my favorite albums I listened to during this whole thing. It made me remember how great it is and how many good songs are on here. Even some of the ones that were never, I don't think this one was a single, but Two Story Town, another great melodic song that I wish they'd play and add to their repertoire more. But I love that song, Two Story Town. Obviously, It's My Life. Just older, great song. I fell in love with that song on the live release from the Crush tour. Actually, the live album I'm referring to is the one that puts all the songs are from different shows and years, but the songs from Crush that are on here are great. One Wild Night is also in my top three Bon Jovi songs. Love that song. Just a great old school Bon Jovi feel. Wish he'd go back to that. I have a little hope if Sambora comes back that we might get some stuff like that, but what a rocking song. In my opinion, the last real rocking album that wasn't so commercial, even though it became hugely commercial because of It's My Life. But I remember as a young kid watching TRL and seeing Britney Spears videos and U2 and then this and that. And then all of a sudden, It's My Life, always close to number one when that first came out. I mean, what a great song that shook the foundation of rock fans. So, yeah, and still one of the biggest, probably the biggest song in their career besides "Living on a Prayer," in my opinion, is "It's My Life." But yeah, Crush, great underrated album, and it sits right there in the top six for me at number six.
My number six is going to be New Jersey. And that's an album that I'm not really that fond of, but some people claim it's the second best Bon Jovi album in the catalog, but obviously I say otherwise.
Right.
So it's at number six. What song is the best standout track for me on this album? It's hard to say. One of those, I guess, Lay Your Hands on Me is cool. The opening track. Bad Medicine has worn itself out, but good on the radio. You know, kind of sick of hearing that one. Born to Be My Baby is cool. Wild is the Wind. But a couple others, but I'll just keep it short and brief with New Jersey. And it's like they took Wanted Dead or Alive and they kind of spun off New Jersey with songs off that kind of frame of mind instead of making more songs like Without Love or I Die for You or stuff like that. They really changed the dynamic, the sound of the band with New Jersey. You could start to see things change compared to the first three albums.
Right.
And sadly for me, they just kind of lost me. I just never was really into the band around the New Jersey era. Um,
Wow, I never knew that.
no, never got into it. Um,
Interesting.
and when you see the albums that I have ranked ahead of it, you're going to go, oh, okay. And then I'll tell you why, because the albums ahead of them are just better albums. There's no doubt. New Jersey has a lot of filler on it for me. Um, And that's why it's going to stay at my number 6, New Jersey.
Cool. All right. Well, we're getting into the top five. You rated this one on your list a lot lower than I thought, but it's 7,800 Fahrenheit for me. You said most of it. I think it's by far, and obviously according to my list, it's the weakest of the first four records. But still some great ones on here. In and Out of Love, obviously being, the biggest and in my opinion the best song on the record. But still, there's still some saving graces. King of the Mountain's all right. Always Run to You I have written down as decent. The last song, Secret Dreams, I sort of like the feel of that. But yeah, good album. Definitely for me stands above the rest besides one from later or from, the beginning of the later era of Bon Jovi, and we'll get there next. But 7,800 Fahrenheit right there at number five for me. Definitely the worst of the early Bon Jovi, but a lot better than what came after.
All right, very good. All right, so we're getting into the top 5 here. And my number 5 is going to take us back all the way, going back through time. We're going to go all the way back to 2002. And I'm shocked that this album only reached gold, but this is definitely the first time I ever got to see him in concert. So this tour was extra special to me, and that's none other than Bounce. 2002 peaked at number 2. Just shocked that it's only a gold release because I really dig this album. I would say for the obviously the standout track to me, well, I got two. I would say Bounce, the title track, is really good, and I like Misunderstood. I know that was one of the singles from the album. And if you look back on the
Well, the first single I think was Every Day, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yes, it was.
It's weird how none of these singles charted in the US either from that album,
No, and
surprisingly.
they had five singles off the record too, which
Yeah,
is,
and none of them charted on the top
yeah,
40, unfortunately, or the top 100 for that matter. Nothing. Just shocking, really, because I remember even like on Kiss 98.5, they were playing every day.
oh yeah, it was all over.
Misunderstood got a ton of airplay.
Yep.
Everywhere I would hear that one. The Distance is another one. So anyhow, but for me, I mean, that's just, I named those songs, but then The Distance was another standout track. All About Loving You was cool. Hook Me Up. Right Side of Wrong, another great song. This album just has a lot more going for it than a lot of the other albums that I mentioned. And yeah, just shocked that it was gold. But I think that maybe that's what kind of killed it was the fact that even though it did get a lot of airplay, for some reason it just didn't, the singles just didn't chart. Had they gotten a couple of those singles to make the charts, the
Right.
album would have probably went platinum. But sadly, it didn't. Who knows? That could have been part of the reason why with the very next album they go, well, we got to sell some albums here, or Island's going to give us grief. So they went out and got Jennifer Nettles, who at the time was a hot commodity there with Sugarland. So, and then they went back to platinum once they got her in there. So to sing that one song. So who knows? But that's what I got here for my number 5, Bounce.
Cool. Well, my number four is right there with Bounce. Again, a lot like you, which I didn't know. It was my first time seeing Bon Jovi. Waited in line at Tops to get tickets. The day tickets went on sale. That's when they first pretty much started the lottery thing. So a lot of good memories come around about that. Was sitting in section 116, great section for a show at the arena, and it blew my mind. Goo Goo Dolls were just starting to get to what Goo Goo Dolls are now. So we were able to hear some earlier songs more than what they're doing nowadays. So it's a great tour. But Bounce itself, the last, I mean, the only amazing album from besides Crush from that time period on. My favorite song off the record, lucky they played it, was Undivided, which is the first song on the record. I love the melodicness, the heavy crunch. Obviously, they're trying to go a little heavier with some of the songs on this record. I feel it worked. Different. I don't. I think this album is unique to its own, where no other Bon Jovi album sounds like this. Like it has a crunch, it has a style to the guitar and the bass and the drums and even the vocals that is it overproduced? Yes, but for this record and these song choices, it
Mhm.
deserved to be. Um, Bounce stands right up there with the other three that I'm gonna say. I just like the other three a little bit better, but Bounce definitely is a highlight in Bon Jovi's catalog, and I'm really glad I got to see that tour as my first one because there was a big difference between that tour and the tour in 2006, which was Have a Nice Day. That was my second time seeing them and I was really let down. And that's sort of when I started not caring so much about what Bon Jovi is currently doing anymore. So Bounce was a very sacred part of their catalog, in my opinion. Definitely an album to go back and revisit for those who haven't.
All right. All right. So my number 4 is going to be the self-titled debut, Bon Jovi. All right. So Bon Jovi came out in 1984. It went platinum probably after the fact of Slippery When Wet. I don't think it was platinum before that, although Runaway was definitely, and still is, no doubt, the song that put them on the map.
Yeah,
That's the song that broke them. There's no doubt about it. And in my estimation, they really didn't have a strong enough song to really, not until the double 1-2 punch from Slippery, which really, everywhere you went, you heard those ones.
right.
They didn't even have a top 40 hit with 7,800 Fahrenheit. So, and oddly enough, Runaway only peaked at number 39 on the charts, sadly as it may seem, because that song is still, even today, no matter how many times I hear it, it's just one of those songs that just never get sick of.
Right.
Definitely. So Runaway, I would say I love Roulette, Shot Through the Heart, another great song. Comeback. Uh, just some really good music on this one. And that's where we got it at number 4 for me. Bon Jovi, self-titled.
All right. Well, my number three, again, you're right behind me there. Bon Jovi, the self-titled number three. I know we're sort of on a time crunch, so I won't go too hard into this, but you basically said everything that needed to be said. Runaway, the first single, still a song that you know as soon as you hear the beginning. I mean, Roulette's another great song, and She Don't Know Me is an okay song. There's some really good songs in here. You mentioned Comeback, that's a good one. And the last song on the record, Get Ready, I think is an underrated gem in their catalog. But yeah, that's why number three for me is your number four, the thing that started it all, and the self-titled record, Bon Jovi.
All right, so my number 3 is going to surprise people because they're probably not even realizing that I didn't even mention it yet, and you probably didn't even catch it either. But number 3 is going to be the new release 2024 Forever, and unbelievable.
Wow, that's
I
surprising.
was, yeah, I was shocked when I started listening to this album. You know, he just came off vocal surgery. You know, all this talk we've seen in YouTube videos how horrible his voice was live in concert. It was pathetic,
Yeah,
worst you'd ever imagine. Who would have thought that Bon Jovi would have turned into that?
absolutely.
So here he is, new album. Sometimes it hits you out of nowhere, like when you least expect it. All of a sudden, somebody turns out and pulls out something out of their ass, like this album. It's
Right.
basically what it is here. As soon as you put the album on, Legendary, cool song. We Made It Look Easy, another cool song. As a matter of fact, the only song on here that I really Walls of Jericho is definitely not a standout track. I really don't like that song, but the rest of them definitely Kiss the Bride, My First Guitar, cool tune. Figure you might like that one because he talks
Yeah,
about
that's actually one of the ones.
Kiss in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that one I thought had cool. And yes, I did notice the Kiss mention. Forgot to
But for
mention that
me,
when I thought
yeah,
about it.
for me, the best song on the album is Waves, and I think Seeds might be close behind it. So those two songs, a little different type of Bon Jovi music, but they're very catchy and they stick to you like peanut butter thrown at your hair. You know what I mean? It just
Right.
sticks to you. I don't know what it is about those two songs, but Waves is definitely the better of the lat. And yeah, I was very surprised that Bon Jovi coming out with one of his best albums in my estimation this
Wow.
late in his career with all the odds against him with his voice and this and that. And,
Right.
I just got to give him kudos, man. The guy made a good, very, very good album. And for me, it's my third favorite Bon Jovi album.
There you go. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I like the way he's going with it. That's why I was number 11 out of 16 for me instead of way lower. Still not to where I need it to be to enjoy a Bon Jovi album, but I definitely dig what you're saying and understand how you can like it, and how anybody can like it. But for me, I need a little bit more to really be sold. We need Richie back, but all right. So that was your number three. So we're getting to the top two here. My number two is one that I was very shocked that how low it was on your list. I forget what number it was, but that's New Jersey.
Mm.
What number was that on yours?
Six. Wasn't too
Yeah,
bad.
still shocking because I these have some of my favorite songs on it. Living in Sin, Born to Be My Baby is I said four songs already that are in my top three, but Born to Be My Baby might be my number one. Love that song, love the chorus, kills live, kills on record, great energy. Lay Your Hands on Me, obviously a great opening track, very like ministry like, very like he's like preaching. It's almost like a
Hmm.
church type thing for rock and roll, which is why I love Lay Your Hands on Me. A great vibe on that. And Wild as the Wind is a good song. Obviously, I'll be there for you. One of the few ballads in Bon Jovi's catalog that I really dig. Um, and the last track, Love for Sale. I mean, obviously this album's a hell of a lot better than Bruce Fairbairn's Psycho Circus. So Bruce did some albums I love, but this is one of them. You can see his stamp all over it. And when people talk crap about him and his production for Psycho Circus, I say, well, consider the source and who they were working for. Because look what he did with some of these records. And New Jersey is right up at the top of his career, in my opinion. And this obviously the same with Bon Jovi as the band. So that's why New Jersey is my number two.
Yeah, and just to go further with that, Bruce Fairbairn, he actually produced the best Black and Blue album, Without Love.
Oh yeah,
Great album.
yeah,
He's produced a lot. I think his last credit was with Yes, the latter. That was pretty much right at the time frame when sadly he passed away. But
right.
yeah, he did a lot of albums, no doubt. And he was the one. That was the missing ingredient. Once he came aboard for Bon Jovi, the rest is history, as they say. There's
Right.
no doubt about that. All right, so we're gonna go back for my number two. This is an album, obviously, that you already mentioned, and we're going all the way back to the year 2000, and that's going to be the comeback album out of nowhere called Crush.
I knew that'd be high on your list. I remember me and you having those conversations about this record. And you're actually the first person I heard Two Story Town through, was
Huh.
driving with you. And I heard Two Story Town, and that's when this album blew up for me. And I started checking out everything. So,
All right, so this was their last really big seller at double platinum. Mostly on the strength of It's My Life, but that's not the only gem on here. Actually, that's probably my second favorite song on here. As much as that one was played back in the day, um, it still won't be overplayed as much as the other two top dogs on that next album that we're going to discuss. But um, getting back to Bounce, or not Bounce, Crush.
Crush.
They're right next to each other here almost. I
Yeah.
always held those two albums like kind of. I liked it because Bounce followed Crush, and I not as strong as Crush, but Crush was definitely the better of the two by a mile. But the track that really did it for me, and I'm so glad I got to see him do it live on that Have a Nice Day tour, because it's a song they used to mix in here and there at shows when they felt like uh, they were in a really good mood. They would play it, and that was nothing other than Captain Crash and the Beauty Queen from Mars. I don't know what it is about that song, but I just love it. A different type of song for Bon Jovi by far, with the lyrics and the style of singing and everything with it.
Yeah.
But definitely my favorite song on the album, followed by It's My Life. Just older, what a great song. That is got to be one of the best lyrics he's ever written, in my estimation, is Just Older lyrically because of the content, and it talks about growing older, and just phenomenal song. He hit the nail on the head with those lyrics. Thank You for Loving Me, another great song. I Got the Girl, just some really good songs on here that bring it all home for me. This one is definitely, without a doubt, my second favorite album, and that's where it's landing in here at number two.
There you go. All right. Well, obviously we agreed with one thing on this entire list, and usually never, and it's not for any other reason other than I I never say, oh well, that's the biggest one and has the best songs collectively, so it's the best rap. Like
Hmm.
Love Gun isn't going to be on my Kiss top one, or yeah, Love Gun isn't going to be in my number one on a Kiss ranking. Billion Dollar Babies ain't going to be my number one on an Alice ranking. Black and Back in Black ain't going to be my number one on an AC/DC ranking. But for Bon Jovi, their best album, in my opinion, is their biggest, is their best, and that's Slippery When Wet. I mean, I even tried. I was like, "God, am I taking the cheap route by putting that there?" But when you listen to this in in structure with the rest of their catalog,
Hmm.
over a 2-3 day period, it's bar none like the Bon Jovi record. Like that, I mean, it's the hair metal record to me. I mean, every single song is a winner. You never get that on records like this. Even when we did the Rat ranking and the Kiss, like you never see that the album with the most commercial hits is music fanatics like me and you are number one. We sometimes I think I might even try to put it lower just on principle, but it definitely deserves to be there at number one. With such a sporadic catalog and a catalog that dips and dives, and these two albums sound alike, and this album's by itself, and the next two albums sort of sound alike. It's it's crazy to me that Slippery When Wet still holds up. I mean, I can never hear Rock and Roll All Night or School's Out again for the rest of my life and I'll be okay. But if I go to a Bon Jovi song and don't hear You Give Love a Bad Name or Living on a Prayer, I'm going to kill somebody. You know what I mean? It's like those are the best songs in their catalog, whether you're a Bon Jovi fanatic or not, I feel. The album just there's not one bad song on here. Even the cheesy songs are great, like Social Disease. I know a lot of people don't like that song, Social Disease. I love that song. Obviously, Raise Your Hands, I Die for You, Never Say Goodbye, another ballad that I really like. Wild in the Streets, great way to end out a record. And Let It Rock is a lot like Lay Your Hands on Me from New Jersey for me, where it starts out the record in like a preaching kind of way, like welcome to our band, this is our world now, we're not like Poison, we're not like Twisted Sister, we're not like Motley Crue, welcome to our world, I'm preaching who we are. And that's what this album, I mean, think about the first three songs: Let It Rock, You Give Love a Band Name, Living on a Prayer, boom boom boom. It's like this crazy three-song section of just, when you're listening to it, the greatest songs in the world. So nothing else matters when I have those three songs on in my head. Social Disease slows it down a little bit before Wanted Dead or Alive, but I think it's okay to do that because Wanted Dead or Alive is such a rocking ballad that Social Disease sort of had that pop thing to go in between Living on a Prayer, which is such a huge and specific song. And then ending outside one of that record with Wanted Dead or Alive is great. So yeah, and then obviously Raise Your Hand starts outside B, and that's another preaching like thing where he's like, okay, we're still here for the second half of the record. It's still gonna rock. And that's what it does. And this album holds up unbelievably and much better than I thought. And that's why their biggest album is number one for me.
Well, I'm not going to agree with everything you said there because I don't agree with everything you said there. But
All right.
that's that. But I mean, obviously, the good thing is we got it both at number one,
But you see what I'm
and
saying though,
and we
right?
could talk about it right
Yeah.
after, right, instead of having to separate it, down the road, which is great. So I don't really need to hear You Give Love a Bad Name or um Living on a Prayer ever again, and I will be happy. Those are, I'm going to be doing a rant show by the way down the road, and that's going to be one of my rants of songs that I just get sick of hearing and I don't need to hear again. I don't know
I
if they're
love
going to
that
make.
idea
I don't
of
know if
rant.
I'm going to hear that, but but Wanted Dead or Alive, I can definitely do without. Do not like that song as much as I used to. I did like it a lot when when it first came out, but 40 years later, 30, whatever it is, 38, you just get sick of hearing some songs. And that's
I get it.
definitely how I felt with that song at this point. Social disease, yeah, definitely the worst song on the album, but it's
Yeah.
okay. So we're not going to I agree with you on that. It's weak. It's the weakest song on the album. There's nothing on there weaker. It's different, and that's probably why, a lot of people don't like it because it's different.
Right.
It's not as catchy as the rest of the album. But for me, where this album really stands out, I would say Raise Your Hands is definitely that's the kind of song you want to open up your concert with. Raise Your
Mhm.
Hands. That's got stamped concert opener all over it. Um, I'd say two of the lesser songs on here that never really got a lot of airplay. Without Love, great song. That's probably my favorite song on the album, bar none. And then of course I Die for You, another gem. And
Yeah.
I've always been partial to Never Say Goodbye. No matter how many times I hear that song, I've always loved that one too. That one has always stuck out. And then Wild in the Streets, another great song. Like you said,
Great
there's
song.
just so many great songs on this album. It's just how can anybody not have this album at number one? Even if you are sick of the big three on the album getting overplayed, um, you still don't, you still can't deny the strength of the album and how deny it's powerful. I mean, look at the album itself. Do you know where it stands right now? Did you ever look at it to see what the latest
Um,
current stats are as far as how many it's sold?
you know what? No,
All
actually,
right.
I didn't,
It's
which I
di
normally do for these rankings, but no, I didn't.
it's diamond, but it's 12 times platinum.
Right.
That says a lot for a single release way back in 1986.
Yep.
You know, that says it all. So if you take the album sales in total of the first three albums, don't even count New Jersey, and then count New Jersey on down, they probably beat the top three by only a million. That
Wow.
goes to show you how powerful those first.
And the
Yeah.
songs are so good on the record. Like you said, there's even the shittiest song on the record isn't necessarily a shitty song. So it's just smacked in between
Yeah.
four amazing songs, hits, huge hits. So they were hits for a reason. Back then, songs that were hits, they meant to be hits because that was the biggest style of music. So for me, like with an album like Slippery, like all it's going to take for this album to blow up again is like what happened to Metallica on Stranger Things. If you get one of these songs in a huge show that everyone from 8 years old to 80-year-olds watch, it will blow up again, whether it's Living on a Prayer or a non-huge song like, let's say, Never Say Goodbye or even Raise Your Hands. All it's going to take is for one commercial or one movie or one sport team to really utilize a Bon Jovi song, and it the album was so big, like Master of Puppets, that when that song came on Stranger Things from Metallica, you didn't think the song could be any bigger than it already was, or the band could be bigger than they are, but it made them 50 times bigger in 2023, 2024. So
Mm-hmm.
I think Bon Jovi with this record will go for another 80 years of being talked about and noticed. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. All right. So there's our Bon Jovi ranking.
In the first one where we didn't match on one except for the number one, which was Slippery When Wet. We always have like one or two in the middle. We have the same number album, and it didn't happen this time. So this one was very interesting because we really did have different lists.
Yeah, when you have that many albums and that many different, it's every album is unique in this catalog. Although it seems like that later catalog, there sometimes if you it's like one endless song after another sometimes with
Oh
some
yeah.
of those songs. But you know, but definitely it was a fun experience going back and listening to some of those songs. I mean, I was hoping I would have gotten a different result with New Jersey, Keep the Faith in These Days, but when I listened to them, I said, "Holy smokes, now I see why I didn't like them." I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is there.
That's how I was. That's exactly how I felt. So
So at least they fell where I felt that they should have fallen in my list. So that's perfect there. So that's good.
awesome.
All right. Any other last words you got about this ranking? Anything else you want to add?
No, that's it, man. We had 16 records to talk about. It was a lot today, so that was
Yeah,
good. We did it pretty
definitely.
quick, so cool.
Yeah. All right, my man. Sounds good then.
All right, everybody, until next time.
Till next time.